I'm Mayor Rick Goldring, and welcome to Burlington Matters on your TV. Burlington Matters is a program I host that features discussion about what's happening in the city of Burlington and talks about the best of Burlington. And today we're talking about history and heritage in our community, specifically about three significant historic jewels we have here in the city, and that is the Joseph Brant Museum, the Ireland House, and the Freeman Station. There's a lot of excitement right now with the Friends of Freeman Station as they finish up their renovation of the station, and there's a lot of excitement down on the waterfront, or right by the waterfront, with the renovation and expansion of Joseph Brant Museum. Today, my guests are Alan Harrington, to my immediate left. He's the director of Friends of Freeman Stations, or one of the directors of that particular organization. Mm-hmm. We also have John Doyle, the chair of the Burlington Museums Foundation, and Kimberly Watson, the curator at the Museums of Burlington. So welcome to you all. I'm going to go right to Alan. Yes. You got an award last night.
Absolutely,
Friends
yes.
of Freeman Station received a Heritage Award at the Burlington's Best Annual Awards. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Where are you at with the renovation? When did it start, and where are you at?
Well, we started our renovation around 2010. We began the process. We formed a committee, Friends of Freeman Station, and we've been working at that for about 8 years. In that time, we've raised about $700,000, and we need about another $100,000 or so to go to get the station completed. So in 2018, we've got a basement in, we've got a roof in, we've got plumbing starting, and it's just a matter of getting it all put together.
So another $100,000.
Another $100,000. The city's been kind enough to match for this year $50,000 of whatever we've raised in donations, and so we've raised about $30,000 in 2018, and we'll look for the match on that, and we hope to get another $20,000 in the next short time.
So the Friends of Freeman Station is how many people, would you say?
Well, it's about a dozen people that are dedicated on a day-to-day, but about another 100 people working as volunteers, painters, artifact restoration, writers, storytellers, and we have a group also working to do a model of the station in the basement. So there's about a dozen people on that as well.
So there's really been great connections established, and it's a real good community event.
That's right.
You've got many people involved, not only the people you mentioned, but also some students have been involved.
Absolutely,
with the renovations.
And we have about a dozen students under the tutelage of Mike Sador from M.M. Robinson. They've been putting the studs in the basement, all to code, and they've been learning that as part of their trade skills. They'll be finished about the end of June, and they've been really terrific. It's really, if you look at the work they've done, it's Class A1 work that they're doing, and they're all following safety protocol and all that as well. So we've been really glad to have that. And they'll be finished, as I say, at the end of June, and then we can put insulation in and all the plumbing.
Over to John as the chair of the Museums Board, or Museums Foundation Board.
Yes.
2019 is going to be a big year.
2019 is a huge year for us.
We're going to have the renovation and the expansion of Joseph Brant Museum finished.
Yeah.
When did this project all start? When does the vision start? It was a number of years ago.
I guess the initial groundwork that was done is actually 40 years ago now. The museums at that time commissioned Lord consultants to come in and do a strategic study on the museum to say what should we be doing with this museum and what's the best use of this museum for the future of Burlington, the citizens of Burlington. And at that time it was recommended the expansion and modernization that it would have today, just on the basis that the current facility is just too small to provide the level of programming that Kim and the staff at the museums are more than capable of providing, accessibility issues, climate issues to meet museum standards. So it actually started back then.
And where are we at with the project right now?
Well, right now the project is underway. As you well know, we had the groundbreaking last October, and contract awarded about the same time, and construction started a few months afterwards. So a good start on it, and I understand they're on track right now.
So we're going to have much more space, Kimberly, to display different exhibitions.
Absolutely.
Tell us about what you're looking forward to primarily with the renovations and the expansion to Joseph Brant Museum.
I think there's so much that we're excited about, and it really quadruples our exhibit space. So we really get to tell the story of Burlington. The idea of bringing in traveling exhibits and it really gives us a chance, especially with the traveling exhibits, to do something a little unexpected and do something we can really look at different topics from pop culture to history to environmental to lots of different things we can touch on. And also programming space. We've got some great programming rooms, and one wall is entirely windows that face the lake. So it's a beautiful space where we're going to be able to enhance and increase our public programming, our adult programming, our school programming, as well as the climate-controlled storage room. We're very excited about that as well. So I think there's so many facets that we're going to be able to expand on.
So let's talk about the traveling exhibition. So what do you see? What is there an example that's been traveling in other areas of Ontario of an exhibit that you can refer to give people an idea what you mean by traveling exhibitions?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we're actually working on a 3-year exhibit plan that we will know well in advance what we have coming. What we're looking for, especially in the first year, are exhibits that haven't been seen in Ontario before. So it's looking and getting exhibits from across Canada, so some of the national museums across Canada, as well as across the US. So looking at the National Museum of Science in the US, the Smithsonian, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're looking at lots of different options. And the great thing about it is, especially the exhibits that we're looking at for the first year, are ones that have never been seen in Canada before. So it really gives people a chance to see something that they wouldn't be able to experience otherwise.
Very exciting. Very exciting. And John, we need some money for this too, right?
Absolutely we do. And although the initial study was 40 years ago, it's probably about 12 years ago that we actually commissioned a fundraising feasibility study at that time on the basis of could we raise $2 million in the community to move this project forward. And the feasibility study told us 93% of the folks that were surveyed said absolutely yes, they would get behind it. And the results that we have seen to date are exactly that was true. So then it's a matter of, it was a matter of how do we get 3 levels of government together, because there's really 4 partners in this project from a funding perspective. There's the city that's been behind this project for some time now, the foundation, and the federal and provincial governments. And so it's been a matter of trying to bring all those pieces together at one time, so everybody either had the budget or the inclination to and was able to support and see the vision of this project and move it forward.
The Joseph Brand Museum has been moved.
Yeah.
Right, it has been moved, and then there's the expansion going to take place all around it.
Exactly.
And so what did you do with everything that was in the museum? I assume you didn't leave everything hanging on the walls and all the furniture in there and all the artifacts in there.
No. That was a huge project that we had to undertake, because we're looking at over 20,000 artifacts, from archives to large furniture to small artifacts to our costume collection. So what we did, there's a lot of different volunteer opportunities at the museum. So we have a core group that help in collections with artifact handling, cataloging, all of that sort of thing. So we used that group, and we had they would go to Joseph Brand, and we had stations set up and where they would go through every single box, and we had an inventory of every box, make sure it's packed properly, get that ready. And the great thing about it is once volunteers were hearing about this project, they would get excited about it. So we had a lot of different volunteers come, and we had a few volunteers that I can think of that thought that they would just sign up for one day. Well, they ended up signing up for the entire day, the entire time. It took about 5 months to do. And then at the end of the project, we're sad that it was over. So that was a great community involvement, and for them to really get some hands-on with the artifacts as well. So we were able to secure an off-site storage facility that was climate controlled, that has security, that everything that we needed, and we're able to store it all there for the time being.
And John, you've been on the foundation board for a number of years.
Yes, over 10 years.
Yeah, you've been chair for a long time.
Yep, for all that time.
What has, why are you really passionate about being on the board and serving in this way? And you've never given up, and you know, you and I have been at meetings together at Queen's Park looking for some provincial support, which we were able to secure with the support of our MPP, Eleanor McMahon. But you never gave up, you never wanted to back away from your role as chair.
Well, I I actually started on the museum's operating board in 2001. I was asked to get involved. I asked then Councillor Joe Law. He said, "There's a place I can get involved in the community that I can help to make a difference." And I can't say that I was a museums and history person at the time, but I was interested to get involved and help. And the vision that the museum staff at the time of what we could do with that facility, once I listened to it and our board listened to it, it just made total sense to me that if you have a facility and you have a mandate like the museum's team do of interpreting, preserving, interpreting, and telling the story of our history, the only way you can do that is you get more people in the building. And then I'm also a runner, and I would run by that building all the time, and I'd stop and look and say, like, there's just something fundamentally wrong here. Here we have what, from a strategic location, it's probably one of the most strategic locations in our city, right in the corner of Lakeshore and North Shore on our waterfront, and this should be a facility that people come to, and we have to find the reasons that'll cause people to come here again and again. So although we're expanding space, it's not about expanding space, it's about allowing the staff at the museums, and we have a great staff team, to be able to provide the programming that's going to cause people to not say, well, I've been there once and I was there when I was in grade 3 or grade 4, but to want to come back again and again and again. And that's the concept of bringing in some traveling road shows, that as we bring them in, people get to experience a different experience every time, and we can change that experience to the audience that we want, whether it's our young millennials that we heard from earlier in the week, or whether it's our seniors, or whether it's the school kids. And while they're there, they can experience the rest of the story of Burlington at the same time. So why I stuck with it? Because I believe in it. I believed in it from day one. I believe in what the staff vision was, and I think it's the right thing for Burlington. So
I think that's what makes Burlington so successful, is a number of citizen volunteers in our community that have passion for what they're doing. I look at your group, Alan. Right. There's all sorts of passion there with the Friends of Freeman Station, what you've been able to accomplish. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back talking about history and heritage in the city of Burlington here on Burlington Matters. Welcome back to Burlington Matters. I'm Mayor Rick Goldring. My guests today are Alan Harrington of the Friends of Freeman Station, John Doyle of the Burlington Museums Foundation, and Kimberly Watson, the curator of the Burlington Museums. So Alan, we were talking about passion before we had that break, and John's passion. We get a whole bunch of people, not just at the museum and the Friends of Freeman Station, that have a lot of passion. Right. What's the secret? What's the secret to the excitement and the teamwork and the social connections that are going on around Freeman Station?
Of course, we have about several dozen people that are working there. Our average carpenter's age, I think, is in the mid-80s, and these people are doing a lot of the.
So what inspires them?
They've been doing carpentry all their lives. We're putting in hardwood flooring. The flooring that we're putting in is donated to us. It's worth about $20,000 worth of wood. Right. It's Burlington grown wood. It was grown about 100 years ago. It's been in a warehouse for 50 years, and now we've planed it, sanded it, and we're putting it in the floor.
But here at Freeman Station, council never voted to demolish it, but more or less we did, because we didn't do anything with it. It sat in the parking lot of our #1 fire station on Fairview. Right. And then in 2010, we took a different look at it.
Absolutely.
And it's only through citizen volunteers like yourself and the others that you've been able to renovate it. Why for you and others, why is it so important that you renovate the station? What does it mean to you?
This is our history. So Canada's history was built on the railway. British Columbia wouldn't have joined without the railway connecting it. Everything ran through the railways, and we were in the golden age of rail. 1 million people have gone through that station. It's a little station in Burlington. It's the original station. It tells many stories. The troops went to war from that station. Some, after the war, new Canadians came to the station here. This is their first sight of Burlington, was when they arrived after the war. So, and those Europeans are still here now, and they're Canadian now. So this is a real building with real stories to it, and we want to keep that story going. If there's a passion to it. It's architecturally sound. It's visually appealing, and so we put a lot of heart and soul into it, colors and artifacts and everything. So when you're done, when you're completely finished, I'm not sure if you ever be completely finished, but when you're more or less completely finished, when there's not the big work to do.
then what? How do you see the station evolving,
Right.
and how do you see the station being used?
Right, so it's a unique space. It's in the middle of Burlington. It's going to be very convenient to get to, in and out very quickly. We can seat about 65 people there. We'll have, we just, for example, this past weekend had the Ford Mustang Club came in. They had a little rally there. They really enjoyed the station, took a tour, left a small donation, and that kind of group. So little groups that want to get together, something unique, something different. We're thinking of making it a cell phone free area, so you can just dedicate yourself and unwind from the city for an hour meeting, and then go back to your meetings.
So you see a lot of meetings there?
That's the plan, exactly, yeah. And also school curriculum, so the grade 3s, I believe, will have a restoration or whatever it is, a diorama of what Burlington looked like in the 1920s. The students can see that with moving model trains moving in that area. So to bring the students in, it also tells the story of transportation and communication. So it adds to what we have in the museum and Ireland House, the transportation communication of this great city.
You said Ireland House. That's my segue to go to Kimberly. So we haven't talked about Ireland House yet. We've talked about Joseph Brant Museum. We've talked about the Freeman Station. But we do have Ireland House, which is tucked into the trees along Guelph Line, north of the M.M. Robinson site and north of the Halton District School Board site. How long has the City of Burlington owned that particular property?
Since I believe it was 1987.
So 1987, we've had it for 31 years, and it really is a great asset, and there's certainly been significant energy expended in renovating and enhancing Ireland House. Give us the history. When was the house, or when was the Ireland House built originally?
So it was built by Joseph Ireland, and it was built between 1835 and 1837.
Okay.
So they're one of the original farming families in Burlington. They owned over 1,000 acres at one point, and what the museum sits on now is about 4 acres. And the great thing, I mean, Ireland House is really a gem. One of the great things about it is it was only ever owned by Ireland, so it stayed within the family the entire time until Marie Ireland passed away in 1985 and had willed it to be a museum. So they were a family that kept everything, and as a museum, we love that. So about 95% of the artifacts that are in the house were original.
Oh wow!
They had used them. They had original to the site, and that's rare. We didn't have to supplement a thing when it opened. We had all of their original things, and our archives is full. It's a treasure trove. It's full of information. They have we have birth certificates and death certificates. We have marriage certificates. We have wills. We even have the application for when they got electricity, so we know exactly when that happened. So that's the great thing when we tell stories about the artifacts in the house, that we have that documentation to back that up. So we know where they purchased something, why we have diaries from them as well, so we know what they were thinking at the time. So it's a treasure.
So when people go to visit the Ireland House on Guelph Line, what's the experience all about?
Yeah, so we have, when you go into the Interpretive Center, there's a display, and what people really love about it, we got 2 maps, and they're blown up to size. So one is from 1934, which was the earliest that we could get of the area at the time, and the other one is 1992, the year after it became a museum. So people love to look at it and see the differences and see how much Burlington's grown. The first map, upper middle, does not even come all the way through. It stops at Guelph Line still at that point. So, and people get to see some of the artifacts as well that the family owned, as well as a timeline. So the idea is that they can build a connection with the family and get to know them and see pictures of them before they actually go into the house and see where they lived and how they lived. And so they get a guided tour as well of the house.
So your devotion to history and heritage is in your DNA.
It is.
Why is it important that other people get to experience the Ireland House and get to understand history and heritage? I mean, it may be intuitively obvious, but how would you describe it to somebody that may not have the general interest?
I think for me, you have to know where you came from to know where you're going. And I think that's hugely important. And I think that you need to understand how we lived, so social and economic, and the history of Like I said, where we came from. So when you're talking about the two museums, it's looking at where Burlington came from. How do people live? How have things changed? And that's the great thing about the exhibits and about the exhibits that Joseph ran as well, is that we are looking to try to appeal to as many different types of visitors as possible. And when the Millennial Group did a presentation at the AGM for the foundation, that was fantastic to hear what they had to say, because to see young people engaged and wanting it, and it also reaffirmed for us that in our plans for the museum that we're going in the right direction, that we're doing the right thing. So I think, for example, for Ireland House, because of accessibility, the stairs, it's a heritage, so we can't do anything about that. But what we've done is we have iPads that we have a presentation of what's upstairs and downstairs. That way people don't miss that. We don't want them to miss that. So I think that heritage and history, I think it's extremely important, and I think that it gives you a sense, I think, of who you are and your city and where you live.
And you animate the Ireland House and the property.
We do.
Tell us about some of the events you have there.
Yeah, we have lots of events at Ireland House. We have a working hearth downstairs, and it's one of the only working ones in Ontario, we're proud to say. And we have cooking demonstrations down there. So we have an Apple Festival fair. We have an Easter event. We're having a Father's Day pancake breakfast where the pancakes are actually cooked on the stove in the woodshed. We have a whiskey and wine tasting event that's going on in June. We also just started doing a speaker series, and the next one is coming up in June as well. And the idea is to do something that's later in the evening that adults, if you're working during the day, you can't make it to the museum necessarily. So this way, it's more exposure, and it's also allowing them to see what we have. So there's always something going on, whether it be a lot of family events. Our one evening event that's adult-oriented is our Night at Ireland House, and that's a Christmas event. And it's a food and drink where people get to experience food that would have been served at that time and drinks. So there's always, every holiday, there's always something going on at Ireland House.
Great. Do you see events happening at the Freeman station?
Absolutely. We had 2 open houses last year.
Right.
Each one had about 1,000 visitors at it. So the doors open is this year, September 29, and we had an event last year, July 1st. So we'll have a few more of those this year. We have some things in the works. They're not finalized yet, but we get about 1,000 people, and they can all get through, get a tour of the station, and see the improvements that we've made since the last time they were there.
So if we're getting together on this show again and having an update 3 years out, what has to happen in those 3 years for you to feel happy with the progress of the Freeman station?
Well, we'll have the landscaping done on the outside. We'll have the basement with a model inside. We'll have students going through, taking tours of how Burlington looked, of the models of what the city was 100 years ago, and then. It's part of the mainstream with the Brand Museum, with the Ireland House. It's just another visit site that you see when you come to visit Burlington, part of the tourism. And there's also other train organizations in the area as well. So if somebody wants to just do a train tour, they can see other.
There's a lot of passion around trains.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a lot of interest.
And it's a major. People from the States would come up just to see that as well. And we do have a lot of original artifacts. For example, the original car that was the inspection car for the Toronto, Hamilton, Buffalo Railway. We have that car, and it's from 1951, and it ran on the rails. It's a 51 Chrysler, and we will hopefully have that moving on the rails. We have 2 other vehicles that also ride on the rails. So it'll be action-packed with movement as well.
I've been very impressed as to some of the donations that you received from pretty far afield.
Absolutely.
That people have heard about the project, and they've had something on their property or something in their basement for decades.
That's right.
And they go, wow, that'd be a great place to put this, whether it be an old inspection car or a baggage cart or whatever it is. There's some great stories about how you've acquired some of the.
Yeah, we have a 1917 Grand Trunk Railway locomotive steam engine bell. That's the actual bell from the locomotive, and that locomotive ran through this area in the 50s. So if you were here and you heard that bell, we have that at the station. We have a speeder, which is a small CN, it's a little boxy car that ran on the rails, and it still operates, and it just ran last year. So somebody just passed away, and they donated that to us as well. and we have about $30,000 worth of other original artifacts from the railways, spikes, rails, tools, books, manuals, and so there's a lot to see there, just artifacts besides the station itself.
And it's interesting the fact that right in front of where Joseph Brant Museum is today, there was a rail line.
Absolutely.
Right? There was a rail line that went along the beach strip.
Yes.
Where the trail is today, the multi-purpose pathway.
There's still a whistle stop there. There's a concrete white W that's still there across at right behind the art gallery. So those whistle stops indicated for the engineer to sound the whistle as he crossed the rail line. And the other rail line ran also along right beside the Queen's Head Hotel, intersecting at Brant Street.
I don't remember that one.
No,
but I
it
do
was
remember
before your time of it, probably. So that was the 1800s. There's another rail
I
line
don't
there.
remember that.
No.
But I do remember the other
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
And obviously when the Brant Inn was there and so on and so
Yes.
forth, which is another piece of the history and heritage of the city of Burlington. So John, once the Joseph Brant Museum is completely renovated and expanded, what's next for you?
Well, I'll always be involved in the community in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's just part of my heritage, part of my roots and the way I was raised, and I'm a strong believer in giving back. So I've been very involved in the Chamber of Commerce. I've been very involved in service clubs, and I'm sure I'll always be involved in the museums in one way, shape, or form. It's part of me now. So yeah, I'll be involved in the community somewhere.
And how many people do you think we're going to get through the newly expanded and renovated Joseph Brant Museum once it's after the first year or two of operations? How many people do you think through all the traveling exhibitions and the regular visits and the different programs that you're going to offer?
Well, that's a great question.
I know you had those numbers somewhere.
It's hard, yes. Do you remember what the exact numbers were?
No, I can't.
We're looking, I mean, hopefully, we would like to see, especially if we're getting a blockbuster exhibit come in.
Right.
I mean, you would like to see 20,000, 30,000 people just come for that
For one
exhibit.
exhibit, sure.
You would like to see that for sure. But we want to see our membership grow and our programming is going to expand. So we're
And
hoping.
give us an example of how the programming might expand. What sort of programs are you referring to?
I know that we're looking at all of our school programs right now
Okay.
that we offered at Joseph Brant. And
So that's
taking,
much more extensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we have the space. We're going to have the space to actually properly do them. And we have a green roof as well that we can use that
That's going
space as
to
well.
be really neat.
Yeah.
That's going to be really neat. That's going to be a good learning piece.
That's going to be fantastic.
Absolutely. Listen, time is flown. We've got to go. But I want to thank Alan Harrington of Friends of Freeman Station, John Doyle, the chair of the Burlington Museums Foundation, and Kimberly Watson, the curator with the Museums of Burlington, for your time today and sharing your passion and your commitment to history and heritage in our city. Looking forward to the Freeman Station being completely finished, and then 2019, the new opening of the grand opening of Joseph Brant Museum expansion. We got lots to look forward to. And I thank you for tuning in today to Burlington Matters. I'm Burlington Mayor Rick Goldring, and we'll see you next time on Burlington Matters on your TV.